In 1996, a serene canoe safari on March 9th took a terrifying turn. Join us as we dive into the heart-pounding story of Paul Templar, an experienced guide, and the harrowing encounter that changed his life forever. As the day started under a cloud of apprehension, little did they know their picturesque river journey would turn into a battle for survival. Brace yourself for a tale of courage, desperation, and the indomitable will to survive as we unravel this chilling story, where one of these colossal beasts didn't just attack, but attempted to swallow Paul whole. The day commenced under a cloud of apprehension. Fate took an unexpected turn for Paul Templar. His friend, who was supposed to lead a canoe safari, fell ill with malaria, which meant that Paul was going to take his place for the day. Despite this ominous start, Paul embarked on what was supposed to be a picturesque journey down a beautiful river. As they peacefully observed a group of about a dozen hippos wallowing in the shallow waters, a client's question about the dangers of hippos lingered in the air, a haunting inquiry that underscored the true nature of these river behemoths. These seemingly placid creatures were responsible for more deaths in Africa than any other species, concealed a lethal potential that would soon be unleashed. Paul decided to steer clear of these massive creatures. However, fate had different plans. One of the canoes started drifting into deeper waters and bumped into one of the hippos. In an instant, chaos ensued. Paul recognized the ominous sound of a hippo deliberately colliding with the canoe. He swiftly turned to witness the canoe tossed into the air, and the guide Evan Nemasango flung into the water, the current washing Evan toward a mama hippo and her calf 490 feet away. His clients managed to remain in the canoe somehow. He yelled to Ben, one of the other guides, to retrieve the clients who were in the canoe that had been attacked. Ben got the clients to safety on a rock in the middle of the river that hippos couldn't climb. However, Paul didn't have time to drop his clients off, who by this stage were panicking and horrified by what they were witnessing. Paul found himself facing a pivotal decision. He turned his canoe around in a daring attempt to reach Evan. The plan was to pull up alongside Evans and lift him into Paul's canoe, a daring maneuver fraught with risk. As he paddled closer to Evan, an ominous sense of impending danger was unfolding. A colossal hippo, or an immense crocodile, hurtling directly toward him like a torpedo. In this tense and heart-pounding situation, quick thinking was paramount. Paul knew that creating a loud disturbance, like slapping the blade of his paddle onto the water's surface, might deter the oncoming menace. With a swift and resonant strike, he disrupted the water's calm, hoping to divert the charging force. Remarkably, this tactic proved effective, halting the torpedo-like wave in its tracks, giving Paul time to lean precariously over the side of his canoe, where he extended his hand towards Evan. Their fingertips touched as he went to grab Evan's hand. In an instant, Paul's world plunged into darkness, and an eerie silence enveloped him. As he grappled with the disorienting reality, he felt the water against his lower body, a chilling reminder of the river's embrace. However, from his waist upwards, an entirely different sensation took hold. It wasn't the familiar wetness of the river, nor the dryness of the land. Instead, it was an eerie warmth coupled with an unyielding pressure on his lower back. Panic surged as he attempted to move, only to find himself trapped. In that terrifying moment, Paul's mind registered the harrowing truth. He was ensnared, head first inside the gaping jaws of a hippo with his legs dangling outside of his mouth. Then before he knew it, he was literally spat out, bursting back to the surface and gasping for air. He saw Evans a few feet away, looking petrified after witnessing what just happened to Paul. Unbelievably, Paul began swimming back towards him, preparing for a classic lifesaver's hold. Yet fate had another cruel twist in store. He was struck once again from below, ensnared up to his waist, inside the gaping mouth of the relentless hippo. This time, his legs were trapped inside the throat of the hippo. Yet again the hippo spat Paul out for a second time. As he resurfaced, he frantically scanned the turbulent waters for any sign of Evans. Regrettably, there was no trace of his colleague. In that desperate moment, he could only assume that Evans had been rescued, and Paul redirected his efforts toward his own escape. Determined strokes propelled him forward as he swam through the waters. Suddenly, a horrifying sight met his gaze. He saw the massive hippo charging towards him, jaws wide open, on a collision course. This time, upon impact, Paul found himself caught sideways in the creature's cavernous mouth. His legs dangled from one side, while his shoulders and head protruded from the other. The hippo unleashed its unbridled fury upon Paul. He held his breath when submerged and gasped for air at the surface, all the while struggling to grip the tusks that pierced his body, desperately hoping to prevent him being torn apart. One of the clients who witnessed the horrifying spectacle later likened it to a vicious dog trying to rip apart a ragdoll. The relentless attack continued an ordeal that felt like an eternity but, in reality, lasted about 3.5 minutes, his body torn between its massive teeth. The scene resembled a nightmarish struggle for survival. In that moment of unbearable agony, Paul had a profound realization. The choice to fight for his life or surrender to the darkness was his alone. He chose to persevere, clinging to the tusks as his body endured unspeakable torment. Eventually, the relentless hippo relented, and Paul was ejected from its grasp, retreating into deeper waters. His body was a canvas of agony, bearing the gruesome marks of the hippo's fury. He had 38 major bite wounds, with his left arm reduced to a pulpy, mangled mess. The elbow was crushed, barely holding together. His lung was punctured, a tusk had pierced his foot, and his Achilles tendon had been torn away. His shoulders and arms bore the marks of savage bites, with his flesh barely clinging to the bone. His back of the neck and head showed the scars of a near-fatal encounter, where the hippo's massive jaws missed his spinal column by a hair's breadth. A tusk had even pierced his face through his cheek, leaving a gruesome reminder of the peril he had endured. Meanwhile, an apprentice guide named Mac, aboard a kayak, displayed remarkable bravery. Risking his own life to save Paul, Mac manoeuvred his boat within inches of Paul's face. Desperately, Paul managed to grasp a handle on the kayak, and Mac heroically pulled him toward the relative safety of a nearby rock. Unfortunately, Evan did not survive the ordeal. His body was found 2 days later. Despite his lack of visible injuries, it was determined that he had drowned during the incident. It took 8 hours to drive Paul to the nearest hospital. He had several major surgeries. He thought he would lose one leg and both arms. His surgeon didn't think he'd live. Not only did the surgeon save Paul's life, but he saved his legs and one arm. The other arm, however, was beyond salvation. If you appreciate this true story, then I know you will appreciate the playlist of other animal attacks, such as croc, chimpanzee, and bear attacks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.